So, today I want to talk about babies and pollution. Now, we currently live in a world where both climate change and global capitalism have already made the decision to have a child or not a rather difficult one for many people. The uncertainty of financial outcomes, the fear of disasters and environmental destruction, as well as the concern of what a world with rising temperatures might even look like, are all valid and important factors to consider when making the difficult decision of whether or not one should have a child or not. That said, some of these factors may be seen as a little abstract for some people, and seen as something perhaps far off in the future, even if those factors are influencing and having significant impacts right now. That said, we've discovered new ways that climate change and environmental pollution are affecting children directly and presently. And unfortunately, I can't even say I'm surprised at this point, although I am immensely concerned when it's been discovered that fetuses have air pollution in their developing organs. So we have here from the University of Aberdeen that fetuses have air pollution in their lungs and brains before they can even take their first breaths. Fetuses have air pollution particles in their developing lungs and other vital organs as early as the first trimester, new research has revealed. Scientists at the University of Aberdeen in the United Kingdom and Hasselt University in Belgium studied air pollution nanoparticles called black carbon or soot particles to see whether these can reach the fetus. Findings showed that the fetus and its placenta are exposed to air pollution black carbon nanoparticles proportionally to the pregnant individual's exposure, which is going to have some very interesting implications if we look at the social factors involved, but we'll get to that in one moment. Now, these nanoparticles also cross the placenta from the fetus in the womb as early as the first trimester of pregnancy and get into the developing organs, including its liver, lungs, and brain. Black carbon is a sooty black material released from the air from internal combustion engines, coal-fired power plants, and other sources that burn fossil fuels. It is a major component of particulate matter, or PM, which is an air pollutant. The mechanisms by which these very small particles, nanoparticles, cause well-known health problems are poorly understood, although in part due to the chemicals they are coated with during combustion. So we also go further to see what Professor Tim Nauert says. We know that exposure to air pollution during pregnancy and infancy has been linked with stillbirth, preterm birth, low-weight babies, and disturbed brain development with consequences persisting throughout life. Now, coming back to who gets exposed to this, which pregnant individuals are going to be the ones that are primarily exposed to this? Well, this article doesn't address it. We kind of already know the answer from research that's been done at Harvard University. We have here from Boston, Massachusetts, certain groups in the US, including Black, Hispanic, Asian, and Latino populations, as well as all low-income populations, are being exposed to higher levels of dangerous fine particulate air pollution, PM 2.5, than other groups, according to new research from Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. For example, what we've discovered in 2016 is that the average PM 2.5 concentration for the Black population was 13.7% higher than that of the white population, and 36.3% higher than that of Native American populations. Further, the study found that as Black populations increased in particular ZCTA, so did the PM 2.5 concentration, with a steep incline seen for ZCTAs, where more than 85% of the population was Black. The trend for Hispanic and Latino populations was similar, but for white populations, the opposite was seen. The PM 2.5 concentration decreased as the density of the white population increased in a particular ZCTA. Now, the researchers have also found that from 2004 to 2016, areas of the US with lower income groups have been exposed to higher than average PM 2.5 levels than areas with higher income groups. In addition, relative disparities in exposure to PM 2.5 in relation to safety standards set by the US Environmental Protection Agency and World Health Organization have been increasing over time among racial and ethnic groups, according to the study. So when we come back here and we talk about the fact that the pregnant individual's exposure and the fetus's exposure are proportional, What we're actually saying is that people from certain backgrounds and groups that are more likely exposed to pollution, and that includes low income groups and those who are in poverty, will end up being exposed to these more often, which means their children will be the ones experiencing side effects like stillbirths, preterm births, low weight babies, and disturbed brain development. Not to mention the effects that this could have that we don't fully understand and know, especially in terms of it being in the lungs, heart, and liver, in the long term effects that could potentially have. Now, we do have to do more research on that. Um, and That'll be what we find out will eventually probably confirm that it's going to have very significant long-term lifelong consequences. And unfortunately, these types of exposures won't stop at birth. If the parent has it in their system, the child is going to be breathing it in shortly after the child is in fact born. But the other factor that we need to take into account is another recently developed and understood concept, which is that we're discovering that there's microplastics in breast milk. We have here from The Guardian microplastics found in human breast milk for the first time. Now, microplastics have been detected in human breast milk for the first time, with researchers greatly concerned over the potential health impacts on babies. But they stress that breastfeeding does, in fact, remain the best way to feed a baby. And while that's true, it's really disturbing to know that it's still coming in through breast milk. Now, the breast milk samples that were taken from 34 healthy mothers, in Rome, Italy, they detected microplastics in 75% of them. These are showing up everywhere. We've talked about on the channel how they've been discovered in waterways, they've been discovered in certain parts of the land and are growing into crops. Microplastics are turning up everywhere, and they're in fish, they're in food, they're everything. And the more we discover them, we already know how dangerous they can be. But the fact that they're transferring into children at such a young age, when previous research has shown the toxic effects of microplastics in human cell lines, and we have lab animals and marine wildlife being impacted, and while we don't know the full effects that it'll have on living humans, it's something that we really need to study very quickly, especially because plastics can contain harmful chemicals such as phthalates, which have been found in breast milk before. Um, so, what we're really seeing here is that the scientists recorded the mother's consumption of food and drink in plastic packaging and of seafood, as well as the use of plastic containing personal hygiene products, and have actually found that there's no correlation with the presence of microplastics. So, eating out of plastic packaging and using things in plastic doesn't necessarily imply exposure from those things. You can actually find it pretty much anywhere, and this suggests the ubiquitous presence of microplastics in the environment, which makes human exposure kind of inevitable, although larger studies in the future may need to identify particular risk factors. Now, the Italian team had identified microplastics in human placentas as early as 2020, which now begs the question of whether or not microplastics are actually traveling through the placenta into fetuses. And that's another disturbing trend that's going to have to be evaluated. Now, the thing is other research has already revealed that bottle-fed babies are still likely to be containing millions of microplastics a day because cow milk already contains it as well. And formula already contains it as well. So while breast milk has it now, that doesn't mean that the alternatives are in any way, shape, or form better. People consume the tiny particles via food and water, as well as breathing them in, and it's been found in things like the feces of both babies and adults. So, while all these reports can suggest is that we look into things and further evaluate the full extent of health risks to humans, the fact remains that more and more children are either being born with or very early in life are coming into contact with very harmful pollutants like microplastics that could cause long-term complications to their organs. And in a world where, especially in the United States, health insurance is becoming a lot more difficult to work with, and that with people with pre-existing conditions and exposures are not getting medical care, this is really concerning. especially in a world where we continue to burn fossil fuels and dump plastic into the oceans and other waterways, to the point that microplastics have just become another part of our lived realities at this point, and something that we have little solution for. And as I mentioned, this is going to affect those who are poor the most. And it's going to have a significant impact because of the fact that those in poverty are the least likely to be able to get actual medical care. And that's not just within the US, but on a global scale as well, because this isn't going to stop at borders. The most affected people will always be the same ones who are affected most by global capitalism and climate change, as they both continue to go unaddressed. So, with that said, if you've learned something here today, consider liking the video, subscribing, and leaving a comment, as well as joining my Discord where we talk about political topics like these. If you're in a financial place to do so, and only if you're in a financial place to do so, please do consider supporting me on Patreon, especially as political content like this can often be demonetized on YouTube. The links for everything that I mentioned are in the description down below, and with that said, my name is Anarchist Tara. Thank you so much for watching.